I understand that there are some questions from our Facebook followers, or the Facebook followers of the mission in Hanoi. So I'm going to be given some questions. I guess there's 5 questions that have been gathered from our Facebook followers, and I will try to answer them quickly.
I'm from Ho Chi Minh City, and she's asked, has the formation of the Asian community reduced human trafficking in Asian, and what should the leaders of the Asian community do to solve this problem?
You know, the problem is being addressed by ASIAN. They have a report which provides guidance to each of the member countries on how to prosecute these cases and how to address the problem. That isn't nearly enough, of course. And what needs to happen is that this issue needs to become a regular part of the dialogue amongst the leaders of ASEAN and indeed all the ministers that deal with it. I'm happy to say that the fact that I'm talking to you, the fact that we do these concerts, the fact that ministers from each of the countries go to these concerts. You had Vietnamese ministers at the concert watching me talk that way. I hope they didn't think I was all that angry. And I'm going to do one in Indonesia next on September 1st, where the foreign minister, I hope, is going to be there. We hope to be doing another one in another ASEAN country. So the first issue is that everybody needs to be more aware of the problem. And the leadership in the region is increasingly more aware of the problem. You see newspaper articles talking about this now. Questions of labor trafficking, where Cambodians or other peoples are in another country and need help. So I believe that ASEAN is dealing with this, and that they need to do more than they have been in a position to do so far. What's the next question?
The question from Nguyễn Thanh Bình from Hanoi. How can I raise funds in order to run an event to have people to know more about human trafficking?
I think it's an excellent question. Let me give a couple suggestions. First off, the MTV site has guidance and ideas about what you can do. You can actually host screenings of the MTV program Enslaved. You can gather together and ask people to come to talk about the problem. It's also true that I think what we need to have is more engagement from all of us with groups that are addressing the problem. The fact is that lives are being saved every day out there by groups that actually need help. The groups need help. The groups need support. So look around in Hanoi and in Ho Chi Minh City and other places for groups that are actually involved in the issue. I mentioned one, Blue Dragon, but I'm sure there are many others that you could say, how can I help you? You know, I mean, can I contribute $1, $2? What can I do to be helpful? Can I mentor someone who has been trafficked? Can I help them regain their dignity and make them understand that they are accepted back into the community? You know, what can I do about if I go back to my village? If you are not from Hanoi and you go back to your village, what can I do when I go there to communicate the problem to those in the village? One of the sad truths about trafficking is that sometimes the people who are trafficked by people they know very well. Indeed, sometimes they're family members. On the labor side, where someone is sent to a factory in another town. So we need to educate people as to, one, what human trafficking is, why it's a problem, and two, we need to make people understand that not only is it wrong, but it's very harmful to their own communities for this to be allowed. So I think that all of us have been in situations where we've had the chance to talk about issues. I'm here today talking about this issue with you. You could have this conversation with any of your friends. You could have conversations at the universities or the schools where you attend, where you could ask your professor, can I use a classroom, and can we put up notices and tell people about this? And you should look on the websites to educate yourself so you can identify human trafficking. The video made the point that sometimes you can't see it. It's sort of like you need to be aware of what it looks like. And one of the things that we do concerning the concerts is that we educate people on how to see it. and then how to respond to it. Those are just some simple ideas. But look at the MTV website, and there's some very practical ideas as to what it is you as an individual can do. And then look for those groups that are actually doing it and see if there's some way that you can be helpful.
This question is from Hari Jam from Hanoi. The question is, trafficking victims are mere children who are voiceless, fight for their life as well as their life of families and are always surrounded by fear. How can we help them to raise their voice after being rescued?
It's a wonderful question, and it relates to something I just mentioned. In our experience, one of the real problems is that once people are saved from traffickers and returned either to their families or to their communities, there is shame attached to this. There is rejection that can be attached to this. So we need to create environments where people feel welcomed back, where they feel valued, particularly children. It's a very, of course, traumatic experience. It's something that changes you. It's something that's very harmful to you. So this goes to my prior comment. There are, again, groups that are engaged with people who have been trafficked, going and showing them that you care about them, that they are valued in the community, that they have nothing to be ashamed about, is something that is hugely powerful, very important to do. And if you only do it in your life for one person, if you only find one 7-year-old child, 10-year-old child, I mean, these are very young children, some of them. And if you were to accept them back and value them, it can change that life back in a way that's very, very important.
Questions, Carden from Hanoi. Most of human trafficking cases take place in remote or mountain areas. So by what way can we raise awareness of the local people about this issue?
Yeah, that is actually one of the major problems that exists, because we have the opportunity in a city like Hanoi to have conversations like this, and there are groups that are working here that are actively involved. We are more likely to be more educated and to have exposure to information on this problem or other problems. Remote villages are places where people are very vulnerable. And so the question is, how do we prevent trafficking when that happens? How do we, once we have prevented it or returned people, how do we show our support? A couple ideas, some of which I've already mentioned, is whenever you go someplace, almost any place that you go, I know this will seem strange to you, you should look for an opportunity to have conversations with people. Maybe it's your village, maybe it's another village. I was just in Hue, and I was on vacation, as I mentioned, and I had opportunities there to have conversations with people about the work that we are doing, including this issue. Maybe I can only have a conversation with 3 or 4 people when I'm in a place like that on a vacation. Today it's about 100 people. Then it was 45,000 people. This is a small audience for me. But you need to look for opportunities, and you say, well, wait a second, I'm here. I'm in some other city or town or village. I'm in my own village. I've got family members who are visiting me from my village. Have a 5 or 10, 15-minute conversation with them. Say, this is something I've learned. This is something I care about. This is something that we all need to help with. And here's what I've learned, and here's how you can help. So I would encourage that kind of engagement with the people you meet and the towns you go to, particularly your own. It's also true that there are NGOs or groups that go out into the field. They actually visit small towns throughout Vietnam to carry these messages and other messages as well. So going back to what I said again, if you really want to do something, there are these groups with which you can engage. And it may be that you actually find yourself on occasion traveling out to one of these remote areas and carrying the message that needs to be carried so that people can identify trafficking and avoid it. And if they can't avoid it, at least understand that when people are returned to their village, they need to be loved and they need to be brought back into the community.
Thank you so much for your sharing. And I'm going to read the last question today. Mr. Ambassador, in order to end human trafficking in Southeast Asia and the whole world, what has the organization done in the past? What are they doing now? And in the future, how will you put forward an effective solution to stop human trafficking? Also, as an ordinary citizen of Vietnam, I would like to know what I can do to fight this social problem that has a global impact. Thank you.
It's a very interesting question, and the answer to a question about what we all are doing is right now not enough. But let me just tell you briefly what the United States has done, about which I'm very proud. In 2000, the State Department, the United States State Department, established an office that was responsible for this issue. One of the things they do that you may have heard about, but this is only one thing they do, is they establish the Trafficking in Persons report. It's about this thick. Every country is analyzed in terms of what it is doing concerning human trafficking and what it is not doing. Before the Obama administration, the United States did not grade itself. President Obama thought that was a mistake. Thought that we should actually be looking about what we are doing and whether we could be doing a better job. So now, the so-called TIP report covers, there are some countries it doesn't cover because we can't do the research in some countries. But I think it's about 180 countries, I think it's 160, are in this report. It talks about what each of the governments are doing and what they are not doing in order to prevent trafficking and prosecute those who traffic, both labor and sex trafficking. So that's one thing that's happening. And I can tell you, and it's really quite interesting, countries really care what that report says about their efforts. And so I think that the fact is that the United States, by publishing this report, is changing the ways that governments are addressing the problem. And that's very satisfying and a very good thing. It's also true that this same office in the State Department has, I think over the course of the last 12 years, 500 different projects in 100 countries around the world, specifically addressing aspects of human trafficking. And those have resulted in very practical victories, if you will, against the problem. Having said all this, the problem is huge. The estimate is that there are 3 million or more people trafficked in the world. There are, the estimates are varied, but over 1 million people in Asia, Southeast Asia, that are trafficked. So we have far to go before we can say that we have addressed this problem adequately. Those are some of the things the United States is doing. It's also true that the United States is funding these concerts. So MTV, which is doing a wonderful job of reaching audiences, some of these things are on TV. Sometimes, I've done concerts with 45,000 people. I might do a concert this fall, the estimates are, could be 100,000 people. So the message goes out to people to make them aware of the problem. And of course, you have to be aware of a problem before you can solve it. And so by making the countries more aware of their problems, by making them aware of what they can do to solve the problem, the United States has, I think, benefited the solutions that we need. Let me also say one last thing, and that is part of the problem requires prosecution of individuals that are responsible for trafficking. And so the United States works with the prosecutors and the courts in each of the countries that wants our assistance on how to prosecute these cases, which means how to gather the evidence, how to present the evidence, how police officers and police can identify the problem. And so we are actually providing very practical support for what countries can do to solve this problem. But as I said in the concert, it's going to require all of you. It's true that the United States can identify who's doing well and who's not. We can grade ourselves, we can grade other countries. But the reality is, it takes people out there. There are many, many, many more of you than there are of us. And the more involved you can be, the higher the likelihood that we will solve this problem. So that's why I said in the concert why it was going to depend upon all of you. And I believe that very much. So thank you for caring enough to be here today, because it's something that actually, as I said before, I was angry. Not angry at anybody in the crowd, but angry about the problem. But it's also something that we can be very emotional about, because I've seen some of those 7-year-old children. I've seen the victims of human trafficking. And it's a shattering thing to see a life spent that way. So thank you very much for coming.